We're on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Omer Rav Yossi Kiyamta K'Hadar Rav Shmuel. You fulfilled what Rav Shmuel says b'Shem Rav Zeira. Kol she'ena yichol likorev. Something that has no capability of being offered on the Mizbeach. Lo hi v'lo damea lo yikitsha lehekdesh damim. Those things cannot acquire kedushas haguf, and they can only have monetary kedusha. The atam ektur lahakrivo ein atayachol dichsiv baboker v'lo oifes, because it says baboker, not birds. Birds have no pidyon. Ein atayachol shein lo pidyon lepum kein. Tzarach meimar lo yikitshal kedushas damim. You have to say that in those cases, those birds only acquire kedushas damim. Chavrai b'shem Rav Yochanan, Rav Ivu bar Nagri Amar, Kumi Rav Ilah b'shem Rav Yochanan Taima dehin. What's the reason? The Tanya. V'im kol behemot tme'ah. Now, normally behemot tme'ah means a non-kosher animal, but here the Gemara is going to understand it to mean something else. Asher lo yakriv mimenu korban l'Hashem. Matam olamer tme'ah. Ela afilu tme'ah ba'oso Hashem. For example, if it's not roy to the Mizbeach in this situation, let's say a animal that had a mum that the owner made hegdish. So that falls into this category of behemoth tmeah, and therefore will not make a tumura. Kasha b'doksi v'hemi v'erich. You have to be able to stand up an animal to assess its value. Birds, you can't be referring to birds because birds are not marich. That pasuk means kol she'ein roy likorev lo kan v'lo b'makom acher. It cannot be offered anywhere. We're talking about here not a bird, but we're talking about an animal that had a mum, and the owners anyways went ahead and was magdish it. That what is being referred to by behemoth tmeah. Such an animal, if the owners try to be, magdish such an animal, a balmum, it does not get enough kedusha to make a tmura. Yotzas nekeva la'oila. So, for example, normally an ola has to come from a male, but if I designate a female to be an oila, afal b'shein rula karev, so you wouldn't be able to offer it an oila, but kan roili karba makom acher. But this is an example where a female animal could be offered in general, for example, as a shlamim. So that animal could make a tmura. Rav Avun Rav Bon Boin Koimei Rav Zeira. They asked a fine question. Harei haroy v'vanir, but an animal that somebody committed bestiality with it. She'ein roin likorev lo kan v'lo makam acher. Such an animal, if it was mugdash, would not be able to be offered. But harei hinoisin tmura. We're going to learn this after Tmura that such an animal can make a Tmura. So that doesn't fit your criteria. In fact, now the Gemara stands this whole limit on its head and said when it says Behemoth Tmei, I'm referring to like a chazir, a non-kosher animal. And such an animal, if you magdish it, kashav doksiv emid verich, it will not make it. The Gemara says, how could you think that you're talking about a non-kosher animal? It's got to fit haracha and amoda, and a chazir doesn't come into any subject matter of evaluation. So that's a kasha that's not explained. Later in the Masechta and the Bavli, it does explain it, but not in the Yerushalmi. Mishnah. Achas Mishnah. Achas Lamed Yom Sharnis Alishka. The treasurers in the Beis HaMikdash would set a ceiling price that the Beis HaMikdash would pay to its suppliers for flour, for oil. But they would say, okay, you have to accept to give 4 bushels per selah. Now, later on, it became more expensive. Amdu mishalosh, you could only get 3 bushels for $1. The supplier has to provide 4, the old rate. Beis HaMikdash always has the upper hand. Yisapik midalid. Vice versa, it became cheaper. It was only 3 bushels for $1. Amdu midalid, Yisapik midalid. He gets, the Beis HaMikdash gets 4. Shiyad hegdish alel yoino. And imisliya soy less isliya low. If the flour got wormy before they delivered it, the owner, the supplier, takes the loss. And v'imhichmitz yayin, if the wine became fermented, hichmitz low. The owner, the supplier, cannot use his money until the Beis HaMikdash actually used the item for kapara. If he used it before Beis HaMikdash uses it, he's over me'ilah. Says Kohanim were so zrizin that the moment that they would get the money, there was no me'ilah because the Kohanim would already use it, and they would already be mechaper.
If they got the products and they became wormy, and certainly you would have to make it good.
Yes.
In other words,
that is until the Beis HaMikdash actually offered a good korban, it was in the reshus of the supplier, and they would take the loss.
Okay. Yeah.
Until the Beis HaMikdash could actually use it. Hadlach perka truma, hadlach perka truma, hadlach perka truma.
They were leaving now. Take this pillow? Is it closed at this pillow?
You want it?
Yeah.
New perek.
Mm-hmm.
Elu hena mamunin. These people were in charge. We're going to see 15 officials that served in positions of authority in the Beis HaMikdash. And what happened was the names of these people became the names of the office. So, for example, like Caesar, Julius Caesar. He was the first emperor. From then on, every emperor
was a Caesar.
person was called Caesar. Same thing here. These were private names, but these offices, everyone had these names in the future. Yochanan ben Pinchas ala choismois. Yochanan ben Pinchas, they had a system where when Beis HaMikdash, people came to the Beis HaMikdash to buy animals, or they bought wine or flour, and they purchased these things at the Beis HaMikdash. So Yochanan accepted the money, and then he gave them like a receipt, paid, and then the people would take the receipt to the person who's going to disperse the actual products. In order to avoid corruption, they had it done by 2 different people. By the way, I got a mazel tov. I had a baby grandson born over Shabbos by my youngest daughter.
Mazel tov again.
Yeah.
Mazel tov. Beautiful.
Thank you, Johnny.
Beautiful, beautiful. Pesach baby.
Pesach baby. Achi ala nechasim. So Achia would accept the receipt and he would give out the wine. Mati ben Shmuel ala paisos. There were 4 lotteries that were carried out every day. Which coin, for example, which coin would shech the oilus atomi? Which coin would do the Trumas Adeshen? Which coin would do the avoid of the Ktoiras? So he was in charge of these lotteries. Psachia alakinin. The Psachia, he was in charge of selling the pairs of birds. For example, women after childbirth have to bring a pair of birds. Birds would get mixed up. So we needed an expert. The expert was Psachia. Now, the Mishnah is going to tell us something fascinating. Psachia is Mordechai. Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai of the Megillah, he was Psachia. Lama Nikra Shmo Psachia. Why was he called Psachia? He would open up every sugya and was able to darshan. The Yodeh B'Shivim Lashon, he also knew 70 languages. Ben Achia al Choyle Me'ayim. Ben Achia he was like the doctor. We'll see, the Kohanim would eat so much meat that they would have intestinal illnesses. He would diagnose and treat all of the intestinal illnesses. Nechunya Choifer Sichim. Nechunya dug ditches to bring water, right? Like he was the plumber. Gvini Cruz. Gvini was the announcer. He announced, "Oh, Chakras is now the base meditation is open now." Ben Gever al Nilas Shorim. Ben Gever was in charge of locking the gates. Ben Babi Mamun ala Pakia. Ben Babi, the Pakia were the wicks that were used for the menorah. Ben Arz ala Tzlotzol, that to start the Levium off singing, he would crash a cymbal. A Tzlotzol is a cymbal. Hugris ben Levi al Ashir. Hugris was the choir master. Beis Garmu al Maisa Lechem Aponim. This family, they had the secret how to make the Lechem Aponim. Beis Avtinas al Maisa Ktoiris. They had the secret how to make the Ktoiris. Elazar al Paroiches. He weaved all the curtains. Pinchas Amalbish. Pinchas was the tailor. He made all of the clothes that the Kohanim wore. Rav Chizkiah and Rav Simon Rabban Chad Amar Kishire Dor V'Dor. These names are the most righteous people of every generation. Balim Nisaleim. They weren't on the same generation. The Charon Amar Mishai Boisador Mona Masha B'Doirei. Was everybody in the first generation, and everybody else in the future took these names. Because they remembered it tzaddik for blessing. That they just mentioned who was in that generation. Because I guess there were some Rishonim in that group. The Gemara is going to say there were four of these who were Rishonim. Because later on the Gemara is going to, in Yoima it says Garmu, Avtinus, and Hugris were Rishonim. Maybe it's not the first that generation; it was later generations who were Rishonim. So Almi Nemar Zechat Tzok Levrachal Ben Kitin v'Chaveirov. Ben Kitin. They donated many things like I think the Muchni. Muchni was like a pulley system that they would lower the kior into the water and other useful items that the Beis HaMikdash would use. Amar Rav Yonik Ksiv, Lachen achalek lo berabim, v'yasatzumi mechalek shalol, when the pasuk says, "I will give him a portion of the many," refers to Zer Rabbi Kiva. Shehiskin midrash halachos v'agodos. He, of course, did a lot of drushes for his students. That these are the various enactments that the Anshe Knesset Agdola did. Lamatik and Zek Klalu Suprotos. For example, Klalu Prat, Pratu Klal. Amravo Ksiv, Mishpachat Soifrim Yoshve Yaivitz. In the Divrei Yomim, it says this is a family of Soifrim. Soifrim are scribes, but it's really from the word Soifer, to count. Matam Leber Soifrim, Elisha, also Torah, Sfaras, they use mnemonics, numbers. Chamisha lo yitroimu truma. 5 types of people don't give truma. Hey dvorim chayavim b'chala. 5 grains are chayavim b'chala. Chamesh esrei noshim poitris tzuraseyim. There are 15 women that if there's certain relationships, there's no yibum. Shloishim v'sheis krisus b'toira. There are 36 cases where you get korech. Shloish esrei dover nemar b'nivlasov. There are 13 things halachas by nevelas ha'oif. Dalad avos nezikin, right? There are 4 avos nezikin. Avos melachas are by chazrachas. So you see, this is why they were called soifrim, because many of the halachas were given numbers in order to remember. Amar Eliezer Ksiv leEzra Kohen HaSoifer. Why was Ezra Kohen called a soifer? Matam lo soifer. Ela kashem shaya soifer b'divrei Torah, kach haya soifer b'divrei chacham. They would count all the psukim, all the words. He organized the same way the divrei chazal, the various principles of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Rav Chani b'shem Rav Shmuel bar Nachman Arishonim, all of these early people that we mentioned, Chorshu, they plowed, V'zoro, they made seeds, Nikshu, they removed weeds, Kischu, they trimmed, Adro, they harvested, they hoed, Kotzro is harvested, Armu, they piled it up into a pile, Dashu, they threw it in the wind, and Zaru is winnowed. Boyer, that means they chose good from bad. Tachno, they grinded it. Irkidu, they sifted it. Lashu, they kneaded it. Kitfu, they smoothed it. V'ofun, they baked it. All of these processes are needed for baking bread. And the Torah is compared to bread because it sustains a Jew's life. And these earlier generations put in that kind of effort. Ve'ein anu lenu ma lechol except for Torah. Rav Aryuna Zmina b'shem Rav Zira, in avon kadmon malachim. If the previous generations were angels, anon b'nei anash, we're human beings. V'navon b'nei anash, if the previous generations were human beings, anon chamon, we are like donkeys. Rav Mana Ba'i Shaita. And you know what kind of donkeys? Afilu kechamerter of Pinchas ben Yair lo izdamin lo. We're not even, but we're like regular donkeys, not like the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair. What's special about this donkey? Adin chamerter of Pinchas ben Yair. One time, this donkey of Pinchas ben Yair, Gan v'soli stoy b'layla. These robbers stole him, and they hit him. Avdis tmira gabon tlosa yomi. They hit him for 3 days. This donkey didn't eat food that Trumas and Mises weren't taken from him. V'loy tayim klum. The donkey didn't eat anything. So basar tlosa yomi, the donkey was going to pay Ravek, was going to die. So the robbers got afraid. They sent him back. Amri Avkinan min hacha the lotemis. We don't want him to die on our hands. Gavon. Avkuna azav comes altar de more. It came to the house of Pinchas ben Yair, and he made noise. Armelon piskun lado alufta. So Pinchas said, open up the gate so he can come in. The islay tlosem and loitamaklum. 3 days you didn't need anything. Paskin lava al-saleh went in. And yavla klum techel yavin komis so'oirin. They wanted to give him barley. V'lo bais lamechel. Didn't eat the barley. Armin lay Rebbe. Bois lamechel. They told Pinchas ben Yair he's not eating the barley. Armin lam takninan inan. Did you give Trumas and Mises Armalayan? Yes. Armalan Varinson Dmayan. Did you remember Dmai is the special extra tithe that you have to give because maybe nobody gave Trumas and Mises? Armalay, what do you mean? Lochein Alfin Rebbe, didn't you teach us halokech zer lebeim? If you buy produce to give specifically for food for an animal, chemical oils or flour to tan a hide or shemen or oil for candles not to eat, potter not mai. So what we didn't take my armor lon manevad lahad al vusa, the mecharmal garmasani, he's makpid. This Pinchas ben Yair is a chassid. He goes, if name is adin. Barim and mai, they removed mai v'chalt, and then he ate. So even like the donkeys of Pinchas ben Yair, we're not. We're like a regular donkey. Then it says Psachya Lakinin, right? Mordechai was on the birds. Borei Magadol hu koicha shel oisa ish. Look how strong Mordechai was. Posech dvarim v'dorshan. He would open up and explain sugyas and darshan. And Yoidea b'shivim lashon. He knew 70 languages. Tani, Sanhedrin sheyesh po shnaim sheyuchlu ledaber. A Sanhedrin that has 2 people that can speak all 70 languages. The kulan ru'uyin lishmoya, and the remaining 68 don't speak it, but at least understand it. Harei ru'uy l'Sanhedrin. That's the minimum you need in order to have a Sanhedrin. So 2 of the people have to speak all 70 languages. The other 68 didn't have to speak it, but at least they had to understand it. Now, if you had Gimel, if you had 3 people who could speak the languages, Harezu Beinanis, that was considered a middling Sanhedrin. Dalit Harezu Chachma. If you had 4 members of the Sanhedrin who could speak, that would be called a wise Sanhedrin. Uviyavna Hayubo Dalit. Right? After the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Tein li Yavne v'chachameh." The Sanhedrin moved to Yavne, and many takonos were made there. And it's telling us that Sanhedrin had 4, so it was considered a Chachma Sanhedrin. Who were the 4? Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Ben Chakinoi, Rabbi Elazar ben Masya, Rav Chizda. Pamachas Yavshat Yisrael. There was a drought. They didn't know where to bring the oimer. There was a deaf mute in the Sanhedrin. He put one hand on a roof, the chad yodei al tzrifin, another hand on a cabin, and nobody knew what he was doing. I said, they asked Mordechai, right? Psachia, what's going on? Omerle, in Asar, is there a neighborhood in Misakre Gagois Tzrifin or Tzrifin Gagois? Is there a town called Gagois Tzrifin or Tzrifin Gagois? Yeah. So they went there and they found barley to make the Minchas Omer. So you see, it wasn't just languages. You have to be smart. Amrav Yusa, Be'Rebbe Bun, Pamachas Nisrav Kolon Kulo. Nishdaf, there was a flood. They didn't know where they could bring barley for the omer. There was a deaf mute. He put one hand on his eye, the yade al suchra, and he put another thing on a door bolt, right? The bolt of a door. That's a suchra. So again, they didn't know what he was talking about. I seen it lagabi psachia. They brought this case to Psachia Armelon. Is Asard, is there a place? The Metakre Ein Socher O Socher Ein? Yeah. because Ain is like a spring. So they found it, and that's where they found the barley. Taman v'ashkechon. Gimel noshim eviu kineim. 3 women brought their pairs of birds, but we didn't know what avera they were bringing it. Achas omeres le'enosi, for my ayin, which again could be my eye. Achas omeres liamosi, for my ocean, my yam. Achas omeres lezivosi. Now zusha omeres le'enosi. One who said le'enosi sarvin meimar shofas kemaya. It must be that she has a menstrual flow like a spring. Armelon Baina Sakanta. No, it's not that she's flowing. Psach said it's because she damaged her eye. She recovered from her eye and she wants to bring a donation for an eye. So it's a different type of korban. The one who said it's for my ocean, again, they thought maybe she was pouring blood like an ocean. Armelon Biyama Sakantazu. No. Susie, I'm teaching Daf Yomi. Armelon Biyama Sakanta. Susie, Armelon Biyama Sakanta. She was traveling on an ocean and she got danger. And this is a donation. Zusha Mesla Zivasi, Sarva Memer Zava Mamish. And maybe she's a Zava. Armelon knows the Ave Bali tells him, no, it was a wolf who wanted to eat her child. He was saved, and she's bringing a korban for thanks. Now, Ben Achya, we said, was like a doctor because they had stomach ailments. Why? Because they went barefoot. You couldn't wear shoes because that would be a chatzitza between their flesh and the stone, the floor of the Beis HaMikdash. By you oichlin basar, they would eat meat. V'shoysim, drink water. How you boil it, they would get intestinal illnesses. Vayodeya haydin chamar tov lamaye, and he knew which wine is good for certain digestive tract illnesses. And those that were bad. Then the Chum Yechoy for Shichin, he dug ditches. Shayechoy for Shichin Amarois, he would dig ditches and caves. V'hu Yodeya Haydin Kayef Makor Maya. And where there was cold water, which water had a heat underneath it, how far it extended. Even so, right? Yet his son died of thirst. That's like the shoemaker. The shoemaker's children go barefoot. Okay.
Whoops.
What?
No.
Now,
Shkoyach.